When Melly showed up for a motion hearing, unexpected things happened, and the prosecution was opposed. Because of inaccurate information in the motion, and the defense was able to present the judge with proof.
Did Vaughn really tell you that Melly told him that he was two friends?
He ain't come out and say, like, we got into an argument. And so, you know, if you know, when people could say something without saying it.
The PC Gambino account asked him if he was okay, and his response was, I did that, and placed a smiley face emoji.
The state to release the relevant search warrant for Apple iCloud in response to the judges. According to the defense attorney, this is a significant development in the case.
Indicates that this investigation is separate and apart from the defendant's current case. It conflicts with paragraph 11 that implies that this investigation is related to the tampering case of Mr. Demons. Is it unrelated or is it related? I think the court needs to know that, because if it's related, I believe, and we will file a written response under discovery, he's entitled to that information. Anything that leads to relevant and important information.
During the hearings, Melly spoke directly to the judge, which was the first time his voice was heard in public. The courtroom was tense as they heard their case for the first time in more than a year.
So that being said, what else would you like me to do this morning?
Well, a couple things. Since the state filed a motion for rehearing, there are misstatements in their motion that need to be corrected. Since we received this early this morning and saw it for the first time, we did not file any written plea response. And if I may, just go through the corrections that we saw. Number one, it says the search warrant was issued in December of 2024. It was 23, not 24, a year earlier.
We agree with that, Judge. Yeah.
In paragraph number 2, they said that the state disclosed an ongoing investigation to Miss Liberty. That is absolutely untrue.
There were severe limitations on in-person interactions, despite his mother's evident displeasure, and his lawyer, Raven Liberty, continued to concentrate on the upcoming court case. Remained in place, allowing Melly and several others to talk only in observation.
Listen, Mr. Demons is entitled to heightened due process. The state is seeking the death penalty. It is very clear that one of his lawyers is under investigation. The one thing I can tell you is not going to happen is someone that has been in custody for 2,160 days, his trial is not going to be delayed under any circumstance. How are you feeling this morning?
But while he waited for the judge to begin the hearing, the defendant stayed composed and thanked his supporters. The hearing continued with arguments over the Apple search warrant as the judge entered, following the filing of a request by the state for review, which was required in order to be reconsidered. When the court acknowledged that a formal decision had not yet been rendered, the judge requested that the search warrant and affidavit be formally submitted for further consideration.
This kind of crazy way that Melly was communicating. He wasn't allowed to use the phone, but he was passing notes to people, and then this person's calling this person and then that person.
They like to me, they going through extreme measures, try to cover up or convince people not to testify, like Mariah mom. They was using code words like Rihanna and A$AP Rocky's baby mom.
Since it is still unclear if the prosecution would follow the judge's order to deliver the document, they are likely to employ legal defenses to delay or refuse to release the search warrant, citing procedural problems. One of the judge's main concerns was whether the defense should be given a copy of the search warrant itself, even if the affidavits are not given right away. The state reacted resolutely, stating that the order was not necessary at this moment, but admitting that the defense might eventually acquire it. Noting that in the event that a search warrant were carried out at a person's home, law enforcement would have to provide the residents with a copy of the warrant at the time of execution. But the state contended that since Apple, not a particular person, was the recipient of the order, the same rules did not apply in this instance. Further interrogation revealed the state's stance, which was that the defense had no immediate right to review the material. The judge asked the same question again to make sure they understood. The state did, in fact, support the prosecution's stance, The position that, in accordance with existing law, the search warrant was not yet ready for distribution, the court's apparent lack of faith in the state's argument raised questions about how this disagreement would ultimately turn out. The defense persisted in raising the matter, clearly displeased with the lack of openness. The judge ruled that the state was required to provide a copy of the search warrant in spite of the prosecution's objections. The judge stressed that the prosecution would be entitled to raise whatever legal objections they believed were necessary, even while the court firmly maintained that the defense had the right to use the official written record of this decision. Following the decision, the case's next moves became the primary focus. The court informed the defense that a formal date will be set shortly, but only once a final decision regarding legal representation has been reached. The court recognized that a speedy resolution was necessary to avoid more delays. The judge emphasized that the accused would. He would soon have to make a crucial choice. In order to guarantee clarity, he would need to choose between finding new legal counsel and keeping his current legal team, including Attorney Liberty. The judge reminded Mr. Demings that the defendant had the final say and scheduled a meeting with him for that same morning. The defense concurred that a settlement should be reached. Given the circumstances, it was best for everyone to make a decision right away. A capital murder trial was set for a few months from now. Therefore, the court emphasized that efficiency in these decisions was crucial, notwithstanding the defendant's neutral tone. Since the defense was inclined to keep his current legal team with trial preparations underway, and a new counsel could cause significant delays, which neither side seemed to be in favor of at this time, the court wanted to learn more about the ongoing discussion with the judge regarding the defense's concerns about his ability to appropriately assess a conflict of interest. The judge ruled that the death row inmate had a right to due process, which would have allowed him to obtain all pertinent information before selecting his lawyer. The court additionally verified that one of the defendant's attorneys was being investigated at the time. Therefore, it was crucial that he find out if he could request new legal advice or decide to forego any possible conflicts and continue working with his current attorney in order to prevent issues. The judge stressed that the defendant had the final say over whether or not to move forward with that representation. In this case, the judge made it clear that he would not become more engaged than absolutely necessary. Mandated by the law, he emphasized that until the state showed new legal authority suggesting that additional interaction was necessary, the defendant and his lawyer would still decide any potential concerns. The court's job was to defend the defendant's rights, not to dictate how they should proceed. Despite these discussions, the court said unequivocally that the trial date wouldn't change. He told both parties that although motions might be halted temporarily as requested, the matter was proceeding according to schedule. The court stressed that any delays would not be accepted and that all unresolved issues had to be resolved before the trial started. Although the defense agreed with the court's position, some of the procedural steps the court was adamant about making sure the trial went forward without needless delays, even though it appeared that a number of issues would stay unresolved for the time being. The court recommended having hearings in the upcoming months or resolving pending motions during trial procedures after looking over the timetable for doing so. Although it would not be desirable to address these things concurrently with the trial, the judge made it clear that further delays would not be allowed until the defendant has had an opportunity to lodge more objections. If necessary, any unresolved motions would be addressed throughout the trial procedures. Stayed in custody for over 2,160 days, the trial would proceed according to schedule. The court responded to the repeated delays by expressing anger and stressing that continual delays were not necessary to ensure a fair trial and that the legal process would go uninterrupted, with all pending motions being handled within the allotted time frame. Next, the defense raised. The prosecution's recent request for rehearing sparked concerns about errors that would affect the court's decision-making, as they had only received the document that morning and had not yet submitted a formal written response. One of the most noticeable differences was the search timeframe. Justified, there was a factual mistake in the state's motion that required fixing, stating that the warrant had been issued in December 2024 when it had been executed a full year earlier in December 2023. The defense denied the state's assertion that the defendant's lawyer was aware of an ongoing investigation. Third-party Apple disclosed that the prosecution had not notified them and that they had only been notified the day before, over a year after the search order was finalized. The defense also cited specific passages in the state's petition that included inconsistencies about the investigation's purpose. Claimed that although the issue had nothing to do with the defendant's current case, there were hints that it was related to a continuing case of witness tampering. The defense argues that if the question was relevant, the defendant should have been granted access to the evidence as part of discovery. These worries were recognized by the court, demonstrating that clarification was. If the inquiry was pertinent to the current case, any relevant evidence would have to be disclosed. The defense told the court that they would respond in writing, expressing their position and restating the defendant's right to any material that could affect the trial's conclusion, rather than asking for an immediate hearing, but tried to clarify the significance of the current probe. According to legal proceedings and discovery requirements, the defendant was entitled to the information if it was directly related to their current claims. The defense said that any claim made by the prosecution that connected the investigation to the case had to be supported by concrete proof. During the hearing, the defense contested the prosecution's claim that the offending attorney should be dismissed from the case. According to the defense, the state's position was that the lawyer should not be allowed to defend the defendant no matter what they wanted. State that there was a disagreement. They had to back up their claim with concrete evidence. The problem raised serious worries. The defense argued that the court's judgment should be based on the facts rather than the prosecution's apparent claim that the lawyer's removal would still be necessary even if the defendant intentionally waived any potential conflicts. Instead of just filing charges, the defense made it clear to the court and the prosecution that the state had the burden of proof and that if they wanted the lawyer removed, they would have to provide substantial evidence to back up their claim. The defense steadfastly upheld their claim that they are not authorized to handle the situation. The defense lawyers spoke with the defendant about the possible conflict at the judge's request. The defense lawyer briefly acknowledged their familiarity with the defendant by using his nickname, but promptly corrected themselves at the judge's direction. The court favored formality, directing attorneys to, instead of using a stage name or colloquialism, use the defendant's legal name. The judge's ruling set the tone for the defense's court appearance and underlined how important it is to always maintain professional manners. However, it also made some wonder if this regulation would be applied consistently during the trial. Declared to the court that the defendant was ignorant and had not yet chosen his legal representation. This comment not only added to the already complicated legal position, but it also made it clear that until all pertinent information was revealed, no firm conclusions about possible conflicts of interest could be drawn. The courtroom was addressed by a determined judge who emphasized the importance of keeping legal correspondence confidential. However, the court also confirmed that, as allowed by law, they will speak directly with the defendant at the end of the session. Each side was assured by the court that there would be no private conversations between them. The defendant would have a chance to make his case and talk about the client and defense. Reactions to the unexpected revelation of the defendant's situation were heard across the courtroom. Observers questioned whether it was appropriate to reveal this information at this time because it implied that the defendant was still in the early stages of the case. Examining his legal alternatives, the defense formally asked the court to reject the prosecution's plea for reconsideration in order to wrap up its arguments, claiming that their position was obvious and that they lacked sufficient evidence to prove a direct conflict of interest. His legal team's unpredictable behavior remained a significant issue that could affect the case's outcome. Although there was a good cause for the lawyer to leave the case, additional important decisions will need to be made as this well-known case progresses. Will the court rule in favor of the defense, or will the prosecution be able to force a change of counsel? For those watching the case, the verdict might have a big impact on how the trial goes. For the most recent information, check back frequently. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates resulting from your help. Review carefully and make any required updates. The lawsuit continues.